Hello again, YouTube. This the Truth Man, aka Prophet Howard. I want to continue on the subject I was on a little earlier. The U.S. is headed for a collapse. What can be done to prevent it? We'll just call this part 2, because I didn't get into everything, and if I feel like I didn't cover enough things in this one, then we'll just continue and continue. Now, we're headed for a collapse, and it's comparably to ancient Rome when they collapsed, because it's going to be for the same reasons. But the difference is that we can avoid it, and there's some ways that we can avoid it. There are some ways that we can avoid it. Now, I know a lot of us, we set in our ways. We have our beliefs, and that's that. We have our beliefs about government. We have our beliefs about money, this, that, and the other. But always understand that your enemies are watching. And to some of our enemies, we're starting to look like gazelles. We look weak. We look weak because this is like one of the only countries where there is no standard at all, no boundary, no guideline. Like some of the other countries, they have boundaries and guidelines, and some of them are bad and controlling. But you need boundaries and guidelines. You just have to have the right ones that benefit the person as a whole. Now, you can't eliminate spirit and call your people whole. You just can't. Now I get, in some ways I get the being open to everybody to come in, but you still have to have your standards in place. And that's what happened with Rome. Rome got distracted, which is the next thing. Avoid distractions. Eliminate them. Destroy them. Remember, this is from the top, from people with power on down the very bottom. You have to avoid distraction. You have to, when you see these things, all this infighting that's going on in the U.S. between whites and blacks, avoid these distractions. Eliminate them. Let people talk. Let them talk. Keep your freedom of speech in place. But when they try to act violently against one another, or even with the police brutality, I'm defending police, but there are some instances of police brutality, and they have to be dealt with without propaganda. Without propaganda, which brings me to avoid distractions, eliminate them. Next, get rid of propaganda. Any propaganda that is undermining your country as a whole, get rid of it. Get rid of it. I told you in the last one that there's people in place that are trying to decide who lives and dies like they're God. You're not God. Okay, let's start with you then. Anybody that's doing anything secret to reduce the population numbers, let's start with you. Because see, you putting us all at risk. You putting us all at risk with your propaganda and the things you create to reduce distractions. And you also putting yourself at risk because you think you can try to pay the Chinese all you want. Eventually, they still gonna try to get you. And then they're gonna take the rest of your money too. So, I talked about how we need to identify hidden enemies and deal with it. Everybody in this country, everybody, top to bottom, need to decide. Am I trying to make this country better? Or am I just trying to make myself better? Or what are you trying to do? That's the question. So now it's legal. President Obama signed a document to make propaganda legal in certain instances. But you still got to get rid of propaganda if you want to avoid the collapse. All that propaganda that's hurting families, the growth of families, that's hurting the industrial world. You lying saying how bad the economy is, but yet you getting richer. So people listening to that, and they are giving up. Why try? The economy is finna collapse. So get rid of propaganda. And next thing, those of you middle class, lower class, older people, senior citizens, stop listening to propaganda. Type in propaganda, definition of propaganda, in a Google search. You falling out with your family members over propaganda. When it hits the fan, you think you don't need your relatives. A lot of y'all, you gonna need your relatives. So don't be falling out with your relatives over politics. You believe what you believe, let them believe what they believe. But remember, if y'all relatives, and that comes first. So stop falling out with your relatives over politics. Stop falling out with your coworkers over politics. Matter of fact, if you want to keep your job and keep the peace on your job, because I've made this mistake too. I've trusted people that I shouldn't trust, which caused me to talk about things that I shouldn't have been talking about. And there was a person in particular on my job. I should have known that he's trying to act like he's smart enough for these conversations. But he's actually not, because if he was, he wouldn't be telling other people what I was saying. And this done happened a couple times. When you like people, sometimes you say things that you shouldn't have said, jokingly, or even showing them what your beliefs are. When you're at work to work, and I was at work to work all those times this happened. So, yeah, this guy, everything he said was basically propaganda. And that's when I should have caught, okay, let me stop talking to him. Propaganda. So, you got to be careful with that. Next thing is keep anything that the Bible labels as sexual deviancy, keep it behind your closed doors if you choose to do it. And that's you individual. And the higher ups, if you want your enemies to see you as strong, you got to stop trying to protect those whom the Bible deemed as sexual deviant. Now, you can protect them from violence, because just because a person chooses to do something or be something doesn't give another person a right to physically harm them. So you protect them physically. But you have to be careful. Because again, you have to leave the free ability to express yourself and freedom of speech alone. Leave that alone. Let that be. But if somebody tries, and no propaganda. If something really happens, then it really happened. Because again, everything we watch on the news, there are spies in every country just to see how we living, to see when they ready to exploit us. So if that's what you're talking about, then you basically giving them ammunition. They're getting ready to attack. Which brings me to my next point. Your leader should be your strongest one. Let me go to the word soldier. See, this is where Rome kind of fell. The first definition is a person who serves in an army. Then it says, a wingless case of ant or termite with a large, specifically modified head and jaws, identified chiefly in defense. Then another definition says, to carry on doggedly, to persevere. So what is all these definitions saying? That the soldiers had to be the strongest ones. So from a civilian standpoint, if you are not strong by the Bible standards, you say, well, there you go with the Bible again. If you're not strong, if you're not the strongest physically, I showed you the ant, they modify their heads. If you're not the strongest physically, stop trying to join the army because you're going to get us all killed. You should be the strongest physically. And remember, earlier in this, I said avoid distractions. Avoid distractions. So the soldier should be the strongest physically and focus on protecting this whole entire region of a country. Don't be in there, don't be in your barracks arguing about BLM and this stuff. Forget that. Y'all brothers. Protect each other. Protect the country. Forget all those distractions, all that propaganda. And at the top, don't bring no propaganda into the military. That's where Rome fell. That's one of the things they did to collapse. And this brings me to my last thing. And if I get cut off, we'll continue. My last thing goes hand in hand with the sexual deviant and the soldier. Number two, all these things I said, really. We have to get back into being the best. The best. Some things you keep private so your enemies won't see them. And you have to have the best, the strongest people on your news broadcast. Because they're gonna do a Google search and they're going to be laughing, giggling. Hey, they got him doing this, that. They weak. The strongest fronts, the strongest traditional people should be representing your news broadcast. Not people who other countries label as infidels. But we ain't gonna go too deep into that. I don't know if I'm gonna make another video about this, but we need to get back to traditional values and live as a team and as one family unit, even though we're not family, even though we think different, look different, act different. We got to get back to that. Then you see how the U.S. basketball team can't even win the game because they all on different pages. Can't beat nobody. That's what happens. That's what happened to Rome. And with that, I'm going to close. We'll come back and visit this topic later. Thanks for watching.